Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Wisdom Seeker Live podcast. Glad to have you with us today. I have to change a couple of habits I tend to say this morning because where I'm at, it's morning, but realize that we've got people from all over the place. So welcome not only to LinkedIn, but Facebook and YouTube. Glad to have everyone here. Just a couple of housekeeping notes. Please remember to introduce yourself. Tell us where you're joining from, what part of the world. Put that in the comments. And then again, a reminder, it looks like I am distracted looking around. I promise you, I am very much focused on what we're doing, but got 3 different screens working that I monitor during this. So just a reminder, welcome aboard, Jeremy. Good to see you there. I'm glad to have you. So just a reminder, the way we look at wisdom on the podcast is we gain knowledge, which is facts, figures, information, and take that on board and then move forward. Next step in this process of gaining wisdom is to gain understanding, and that's based on our experiences. And hopefully we're learning how to apply the knowledge we've gained in life. And then we move forward from there to learning wisdom. And the big thing about wisdom is that wisdom is seeing things from a much bigger perspective, including and especially outside of ourselves. And so that's the wisdom journey for us. Good morning, Zaid and Matt. Good to see you, my friend. And Scott, David, glad to have you. And I remember to let us know where you're joining from. So that's what our wisdom journey is about. And we've been talking now for a while, 2 podcasts about communication. And I wanted to bring on a dear friend of mine, colleague, and someone that I have a great deal of respect, has helped me learn more about not just communicating well, but communicating wisely. And so her name is Virginie LeMay, and we've worked together. So I want to bring Virginie on board. She's you'll gain a lot from her. So welcome, VJ. Glad to have you here. So without any further ado, let's get Virginie on camera with us, and we'll start moving forward.
Hi,
Welcome,
Kevin.
Virginie.
Thank you for having me.
Sure. Tell everybody a little bit about yourself.
Sure. So as you all can hear, for those who don't hear me, I'm French. I'm currently based in Luxembourg in the middle of Europe. For those of you who don't know, Luxembourg is a very, very small country located between France, Belgium, and Germany. Have been an expatriate for most of my life. I've worked in big international organizations where I manage lots of international and multicultural teams. And the last work I did in the corporate environment was at Amazon, where I worked there for a few years. I was the senior manager for quality and then senior manager for learning and development for customer service in Europe. And for the last 3 years now, I decided to start on my own. So I'm a leadership trainer, coach, consultant here out of Luxembourg, and really happy to be with you today.
That's great, Virginie. And welcome, Artem. And again, if I mispronounce your names, please be sure to correct me. I have the utmost respect for everyone's name, so I don't want to mess up. And I appreciate everyone letting us know where you're from. We've got Artem from your neck of the woods, Virginie, Luxembourg. And then, of course, VJ is from India. Welcome, Panda. Glad that you're with us from India as well. And let's see, my friend Matt's in Florida, down in the Sunshine State. Welcome, Rosemary. Glad to have you from down under. Rosemary stays up late to join the podcast each week and from Australia. So welcome aboard. And what we've been talking about, of course, is communication. And a little background, what sparked this is I was asking, I did a poll on LinkedIn about the two terms. One of them is attitude, and one of them is mindset. And I asked the question, are they the same or are they different? And I got surprising results from it. It was about a 60-40 split. That about 60% said, oh, can be used they can be used interchangeably, and others said, oh no, they're very different. And that's fine. I get that, because even I struggle with, what's the difference between the two, and I tended towards thinking of them interchangeable, but after that I kind of went, maybe not. But what it pointed out to me is the challenge in communication is having a common ground with the words we use. And I have to brag on Virginie. She has been a part of efforts with Perspective Force, and she has helped Anton and I a great deal to make sure of how we're communicating, to communicate well, and not just that, but wisely. And those are two different things, because a lot of people can string the words together just right, say them well, but the wrong timing, or so that's kind of where we've been at, Virginie. And I tell you what, is it okay if I use V?
Of course.
Okay. When we are together with Perspective Force, we have shortened names, and so when I start referring to Virginie as V, don't think I'm losing my mind. Rube, welcome. Tushar, welcome. Glad to have you all with us. So, okay, I'm going to ask your input, first of all, on the two terms, mindset and attitude. V, what's your thoughts there?
I was thinking that's a great question, and actually, I would have said they are not interchangeable. For me, and I may not have the right answer. So for those of you who are listening, it's just my opinion. But for me, attitude is more what I do, versus mindset is what is inside of my head. And that's how I would differentiate that. Of course, sometimes they are the same, because you will act according to what you're thinking. But to me, that would be the difference that I see. And to your point, Kevin, yes, it's very important to be as clear and as precise as possible, especially nowadays in a global environment where we meet people from different countries and different languages. We have to remember that there are lots of people like myself who are not native English speakers, and a word that may be obvious for native English speakers may not be so obvious for someone else. So that's why it's very important, and I love the fact that you asked this question, because what may have what may have been obvious actually isn't. So yeah, that's what I think about the difference between attitude and mindset. I don't know if you had the same kind of feedback from your survey, Kevin.
It was quite interesting, and the lower percentage were people that said they were different, but the explanation provided actually caused me to start considering maybe I had approached it, I don't know, naively or ill-informed about it, and I have actually shifted my thinking on it and trying to figure out how to differentiate. But the fact that we can at least come to the conclusion that they're not interchangeable, especially as much as we see the conversations in social media about attitude and mindset, having a common ground can avoid a lot of challenges there. So yeah, welcome Sharon from the US, and appreciate you being here. Let's see, before we get into this too much, let me share a couple of comments I appreciate that Panda makes the comment about women empowerment, and I know that V does a lot of work making sure that we are all inclusive, including women, recognizing that differences aren't a bad thing. They're all good, and we need to embrace it all. And another comment from Panda was about mindset. She says allows continuous encouragement, and she goes on to say if we have the right attitude of learning. And so insightful comments. V, let's back up and get a bigger perspective. Tell us, by the way, V impresses me a great deal because how many languages do you speak? 5 or 6? Or?
Yeah, I fluently 5. I can get by with a 6th one, yes.
Okay. And folks, if that doesn't impress you, you're doing much better than I am. So share a little bit about, again, we talk about communication and everybody talks about how to communicate well, listening, active listening, and all of that. But I don't think we consider the wisdom in communication. So share a little bit about your perspective on how we can be wiser in our communication, not just communicate well.
That's also another great question, Kevin. What I would say is we often think communicating is talking, and actually it's not. It's more listening. And we always say we have 2 ears and 1 mouth, and that's for a good reason. And so I think that is how we can be wiser. We should always try to put ourselves in the other person's shoes and not think that we have all the answers. There is nobody in this world that knows everything about everything. And because, again, we are in a global environment, there is always somebody who will have another perspective. Just as we said, women see certain things differently than men. Younger people see things differently than older people. You name it. French people like myself, we see different things differently, like you, Kevin, as an American. So by really trying to listen to the other persons, to really trying to understand where they're coming from, why are they saying certain things, this is how we not only learn, but we become wiser. And when we learn, we grow as a person. As I always strive to learn something new every single day. And because, again, I don't know what I don't know. We may be also an expert in an area, but as I said, there is always someone somewhere else who will know something that we didn't think of or that we didn't notice. Because, again, certain things we think are obvious and they may not be. So really the key to me to become wiser in communicating is really spending time in listening and asking questions. And it also obviously will happen that we don't always agree with someone, and that is okay. You never, even if you live in a society with people who are exactly the same as you, have the same background, who have the same kind of living in the same city or village, etc., you will still have people who will disagree with you. And as I say, it is absolutely okay. The key is to respect people, to really say, okay, I don't agree with you, but I'm trying to understand where you're coming from, or I'm trying to understand why you say certain things, because that is the way, again, we can learn from each other. So that is the key, I think, in becoming wiser in communicating. It's really listening and keeping an open mind.
Yeah, it's really, thinking about our conversation this morning before the camera went on, we were just catching up because it'd been a while since we'd talked. And I was sharing that this weekend that I had been involved in Repel training. And I just started talking, and I'm assuming everybody knows what Repel training is. And fortunately, am learning. I'm not there yet, V, but I'm learning.
Well, you're doing great.
I noticed that even though you're being attentive and understanding, that maybe it wasn't clear. So we stopped clarified, and then went on, and then it made more sense, and we got more, both of us got more out of the conversation. So
Yes,
really
absolutely.
good.
So it turned out that I knew what it was. I just didn't know the name Repellant.
There you go. Right. So yeah, it's not a matter of people being unaware or ignorant. It's just terminology quite often. You ask, what's the, around here we say potato, potato. Same, it just depends on where you come from, your history, and so on. So welcome to Pushkar from India. And let's see here. We've got a question, V, that I'm going to let you address. I think you have a better perspective on this from Artem. He says, what message will you give for all over the world, especially for women who really want to be independent? So I'm going to let you take that one.
So thank you for asking this question, Artem. I would say the first thing is really to not care about what other people say. Follow your heart, I would say. We have been conditioned in our societies to do certain things, to follow people. And if deep down you know that you want to do certain things, then just work and do them. It doesn't matter what people will say, because people will always say some things about you. So I would say if women want to be independent, it's really like to really believe in themselves, and then don't listen to other people. Yes, you go take some feedback, as I said earlier on, keep an open mind, listen. But once you've gathered all that feedback, once you have all the information, look at yourself, look at where you are and where you want to be, and then take a decision, make the step. And it doesn't matter, as I say, what people say. Really believe in yourself and just do what you need to do. I've had countless of times where people have called me crazy, or people were asking me, why aren't you married, or why don't you have children? I've had that for a long, long time. Now I'm married, so I don't have this question anymore. But for many years, I was in my 30s and all my friends were married and having children. And I got the remark, yeah, why aren't you married, or why don't you have children? And it was just like, well, first, it's my life, and if I'm happy with my life, it doesn't matter whether I'm married or not, or whether I have children or not. And another thing I want to say, to actually not only to women, but to everybody, I see also lots of people putting pressure onto themselves that they need to have reached certain things by a certain age. And again, it doesn't matter what society tells you. Everybody has their own timing. So you don't have to be like have kids by the age of 25 or be a millionaire by the age of 30. It doesn't matter. Everybody has their own timing. I've seen people on internet finding their purpose when they were 60 or 80. And that's great. That is great, because all the years they've learned things, they've moved on, and finally they reach their goal. But some people will reach some of their goals when they are 20, some when they are 80, and it's absolutely fine. So back to what I was saying again, believe in yourself and don't really pay attention to what people will say to you, because they will always judge. People will always be easy to criticize you. But the thing you have to keep in mind is that you have only one life, and it's yours, and nobody's walking in your shoes. So that would be my message.
Very good. Thanks, V. Let me share a comment from Rosemary, because she speaks to Artem's question. She says, the answer for me is to simply not place any form of boundary or barriers into a little girl's life, and she'll grow into a strong, independent, self-assured person. My dad never told me I couldn't do anything based on my journey based on my gender, and in turn, my daughters and granddaughters are mirror imaging the way I grew and learned. Yeah, I have to say that when I was teaching, I was teaching in an area that is primarily male-dominant world of construction. But I was fortunate to have on a number of occasions young ladies in my class. And what I would always tell them is if this is what you love, do it. And you have qualities that will be good in this work world. So don't have limits. And I mean, and that's a good, like you mentioned, V, it's good for all of us, but it's especially a challenge for women in our world. It's sad to say, but quite often we put limits on the ladies, and that's foolish. It is definitely unwise.
Yeah. No, and if I can add something as well, I've often been in the past, as I say, when I was working in corporate environments, I was often one of the few women there, and sometimes even one of the youngest and one of the foreigners. So I know that I was always a bit like different, and as I say, I've got comments or remarks or looks even from people. But again, don't pay attention to what people say or how they look at. Just do what you have to do, and sooner or later they will see all the skills that you're bringing and the value that you're bringing. And that is to me the best revenge, because again, people can say, oh, look, she's a woman, or look, she's that young, or she can't do this and that. And it's when you do it that people will say, oh, wow, I never thought she could do it. And that, as I say, to me is the best reward, because it's not a question of gender. It's a question of following what you want to do, following your goal, and have the will to work at it.
Thank you. Welcome, Dr. Sharma. Glad to have you with us. Welcome, Satish. Dr. Sharma is from India, I believe, and then we've got Satish from Mumbai.
Right.
Matt, I appreciate you stopping in. It looks like you got other responsibilities. I appreciate that. All right, we've got some comments, V. Let's take these and see what they have to say. Being assertive is very important today. Fear of criticism for what other people will say hold us back from early childhood, at least in India. Satish, it's not a problem just in India, I promise you. It's everywhere. And you go on to say it's necessary to be assertive, to say what you want to say, and never to say yes if you want to say no. Very important. And in fact, there's wisdom in that statement, because too many of us struggle with saying no when we say yes, and it's a problem. So it's important to be willing to stand up and be you. It really is. And in communication in particular, don't let people shut your voice down. One of the things that I say and maintain is that there is wisdom in the Bible that says that that we should be us, be who we are, and not apologize for that, and live what we're supposed to live. Don't worry about what others think. We've got another comment from Jeremy. Perspective views, listening while watching. How we use the power of our words is where magic happens in both business as well as in who we meet and what we continue to learn. Power of words can make or break a business and make a big difference in someone's growth. That is so true, Jeremy. We sometimes lose sight of what real communication is. And like V said early on, it's more than just words, a lot more than just words. And if we're going to be wise in communication, we got to hone some other skills. Would you agree with that, V?
Yes, absolutely. To what Jeremy said, I often think of that expression, who says words can be more powerful than weapons, because they say. And that is why it's key to really be mindful on how we speak and what words we use, because again, we may say something that to us is not so important, but it may hurt someone really deeply. Or on the opposite, it may trigger it and then have the person do something and go and exceed expectations. So really, it's really important to be very mindful of what we say and how we say things. And to your point, Kevin, in communicating, as I said, listening to me is very important, but it's also being aware of our audience, so who we're talking to, and how we communicate, not only what we say, how we say, but also the gesture or the clothes that we wear, especially if we travel to other parts of the world. This is all part of communicating and giving the right impression. Or the wrong impression can be a break. I'm losing the word now. A break dealer? Do you say that? No, a deal breaker. Sorry, a deal breaker.
That's how it works.
Yes, exactly. A deal breaker. So you really have to be very mindful. And as Jeremy said, because you never know the impact it may have on a person. It can be very positive, but it can be also very negative. And that is how you can lose friendships, partnerships, but also just business.
Yeah. Welcome, Jakashan, joining us just now. Appreciate that. And then Rosemary has another comment. She says, for me, it's frustrating and when anyone feels that they're not deserving of being the best they can be, or they do not have the right to follow their dreams, talents, and skills. No one has the right to hold another person back or down. So true. And like you said, the part of what we have to consider in communication beyond adequately expressing our thoughts is the impact on others, including, like Rosemary has mentioned, the tendency to maybe hold someone back. And if we're not careful, we'll do it without even knowing it. And that's truly sad.
Yes, absolutely.
So,
and it's so funny, if I may add something, Kevin.
Sure.
People often, as I said before, people often judge, and sometimes we do it unconsciously. We judge people, but often people make comments. It's out of jealousy as well, you know. Like as I said, how many times people have told me you're crazy, or how many times have I been said, oh, you're lucky, but they don't see why I'm doing things. They have never tried to understand where I was coming from, and they've never seen all the work I've put in. So, as I say, it's you're right, Rosemary. Putting down people is to me as well. It's something I try not to do. As I say, I'm always trying to be as mindful as I can. But sometimes we do it unconsciously. But when someone do it on purpose, then it's bad. And that's why I always say you should always try to put yourself in the other person's shoes, because you don't know what he or she has been through in the past.
Yeah, that was, as I was thinking about this whole topic of communication, at first, my thought was, well, if we communicate well, we're communicating wisely. And then I realized, no, they are not necessarily one and the same. And what you were speaking about, V, is a part of the concept of wisdom to start with, and that's backing up and getting that bigger picture. So often we will speak or communicate other ways only based on our little world. Exactly. And we need to know our little world and live in our little world, but especially today on social media, of all places, it's most critical because what we say goes to lots of different people, lots of different cultures. Plus, one of the things that, and I share this as a caution to anyone using social media, be very careful what you say and do on social media, because it doesn't go away and it can haunt you for years. So let's see, Sharon has a comment. And Sharon, I apologize. Today you get the LinkedIn user tag for some reason. Don't know why that happens, but she says, think before you speak, because you cannot take back the words and they may hurt someone if you just speak. Also believe in yourself and don't allow anyone to bring you down. So true. V, your thoughts on Sharon's comment?
No, I fully agree. Believe in yourself. That's also what I said. Don't allow anyone to bring you down. Again, that is what I said. Try not to pay attention to what people will say. They often speak out of envy or jealousy.
Mm,
So again, believe in yourself. They have their opinion. That's fine. They are not walking in your shoes. They are not you. You have your life, and there is nobody else that has your life. So really, what I can't remember who said that, but what other people says about you is none of your business, and that's
yeah.
exactly the way we should see things, is that people may think whatever they want. And as I say, people will always criticize you no matter what you do. You wear white, they will say, oh, she never wears black. You wear always black, she never wears white. If you wear white or black, they say, oh, she never wears colors. As I say, people will always have something to say. So just believe in yourself, and really focus on your goals, and try to look forward and to move on, and that's the key to me, and really, when you are with others, be very mindful and keep an open mind and be respectful at all times.
Yes, I think back, V and I, 2 years ago, did a webinar on confidence. And
Yes.
some of what we're talking about is things we discussed in that webinar of gaining confidence. And it's very important to have that confidence. And one of the things that I have begun to really try to get people to grasp is our value. Unfortunately, we tie our value to so many things that are not our value, or how we determine our value. One of my quotes that I share now is that, our value is given to us by our Creator. Okay. We didn't earn it, so we can't lose it. Others didn't give it to us, so they can't take it away. So don't let people challenge your value as a person by their words, by their actions, because your value is established. There's no discussion. You just act and behave in accordance with who you're made, and all, and that goes a long way. If you don't have a comment on that, I wanted to ask you another question.
So just about on values, maybe I want to add something, and that's something as well. I know it took me a long time to understand how important it was to really follow your values. It's in a work environment. You often see people as well saying they're not happy, they're frustrated, they get a burnout, and I've been there exactly for that reason, because I was doing a job in a company where I was not sharing the same values. And I was getting more and more frustrated, sorry. And so in the end, in a way, fortunately, my whole department was laid off, and I was probably one of the few who was happy, because I was saying, okay, finally, I have time to look for a job that I really want to do in a company where I share the same values. And so to my advice to people, especially for those of you out there, if you're looking for another job, or if you are in a job where you're not happy, look at your values and those of the company, and see if there is a match. And if there isn't, are you ready to compromise on certain that are not the same as yours? And if you are not willing to compromise, then maybe that's a sign to tell you to look for another one. So that's why I think values, it's very important to know what they are, because they help us not only personally but also professionally.
Well, and I would add to that, what you say is true. Don't just know them, but especially in your job interviews, express them, communicate them, because you may find that if you voice your values, you may find that it keeps you from getting in a position where you've got to decide whether or not to take an inappropriate job for you. And I know recently one of my sons had interviewed for a job, or had sought out a job. A recruiter had reached out, and immediately he does his research on this potential company, and he sees some possible value clashes, And so he went on to the interview, but he shared with them, you've got a core value of this, and I'm not sure that I could support that. And if a requirement of me working for you is supporting this value, then it's not going to be a good fit. And that's something we should all take away.
Yes.
Let's see. Jake Kashan has a comment. Let me get that up. So in present days, communication means control over your mind, speech, word, and body language while expressing to others. Yes, wisdom in communication involves self-control, I believe is the term that fits here. And it is indeed important to have self-control. For me, the way I am, the way I'm wired, I'm having to learn. And we have a saying, I don't know, V, this might not resonate in other countries, but we have a saying, don't put your mouth in gear before you put your mind in motion. Because times, don't speak before you think is the message. And it's a hard thing for some of us, me being one, and I've had to learn at times just to sit and be quiet. And one thing that helps me with that one is this another saying, I believe it's attributed to Abraham Lincoln. He said, better to remain silent and thought a fool than to speak up and remove all doubt. So when I start to open my mouth, I remind myself of that one.
Love that.
Your thoughts, V?
Yeah. Yeah, to the comment that was just made about controlling the mind, I agree, and that's why I go back to what I was saying at the beginning. That's why it's important to keep an open mind and to ask questions. And so if you feel that you're being controlled by the media or whatever, make sure you look around for other sources of information, if that's what you meant. Because again, certain medias will give certain information a certain way. But if you look at different types of media, that really helps you again open your mind and learn new things. And when you speak different languages like myself, I don't always look at the French news or the English news. I also look at what's happening on the German news and the Dutch news, etc. So by also having different point of views in different languages as well, I can see whether some information I heard was the right one, or if it has been a bit twisted, or if other countries are simply not aware of. So that's also another way of trying to make sure you're not fully controlled and that you keep an open mind and you keep learning and growing.
Yeah, and in fact, V, as you're talking, something that I learned actually kind of clicked in my brain reading your book. By the way, V has a book out there. We'll give you some information on that before we wrap up. It's a great read. But when reading your book and reading about your circumstances and what happened to you was in one country, but then you had to go to another country. For me in the U.S., that was such an odd concept because the size of the U.S., the idea of having to go from one country to another in that circumstance was just, I'm going, wait a minute. And then I have to remind myself where you live, you got you're surrounded closely by 5 or 6 countries.
Yes.
So,
correct.
So getting information in that case from other countries is helpful because that's where you live. I mean, it's part of it. That would be like where I live, getting information from neighboring states because they will directly affect me versus another country in my case. So,
correct.
Yeah. VJ, I appreciate you stopping by. He's got to take off. Thanks. And hopefully you can join us next week. Welcome, Ashfaq. Ashfaq is from Pakistan, has been on the show several times. And then Zaid has a comment that is part of what we're talking about. Compromising should be a two-way street and not just a one-way road. Zaid, it is so true. And what V, you were talking about people responding from jealousy and defensiveness. To me, part of this one-sided communication comes from people that are so defensive and all that they just can't entertain the idea that somebody has a better perspective, a different perspective. That's okay. What do you think on that one?
Yeah, it's when I love what Zayad wrote. Compromising is a two-way street, because I often see it, and even in my close family, you have givers and takers. But when it's always the same person who are giving, and always the same persons who are taking, at some point you're reaching a point where you're just like, okay, this is not going to work anymore. And so compromising, yes, it's very very important that it needs to be a two-way street. And to the point that was made earlier on, it's okay to know when to say no, because maybe this time you're thinking, oh, okay, this is not what I wanted. Okay, I'm going to compromise and I'm going to do this for you. But that means that the next time something is really important for you, then you can try to put your foot down and say, well, last time I did that for you, so now this time that would be great if you could do that for me. And that is the power of saying no. That is the power of compromising, knowing your values, because this is when you know when you can compromise or not, or what when you are ready to show you are flexible to compromise, or if it's a no, a deal, and then you just stand your ground. So compromising, it's a very important tool, but it should, as you said, it should be a two-way street and not always the same person compromising.
As we talk on perspective force balance, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Definitely. Yeah. And and the other communication tool that I have found, and I have found wisdom, at least for me, is there are times, you have conversation with someone, especially if it's in the form of a disagreement or debate. You just say, we just don't agree on this, and that's okay. We don't have to agree on everything. A friend of mine once said, and I don't remember which one, but the comment was, if everybody agrees on everything, somebody's not needed.
True. That's very true. Yeah. And that's how creativity doesn't have any place anymore, or innovative companies don't have a place. Because if everybody thinks about the same thing the same way, well, you will never progress, because you will never come up with a new innovation, because everybody will think, oh, no, that's good enough, and we can stick with that. So that's why it's okay to disagree, and it's okay to challenge each other. As I said, the most important part is to do it in a respectful way.
So true. In fact, that segues into Jeremy's comment. He says, using empathy towards others can assist with gaining an insight into others' perspective, and it can be used, your words better, where it may be articulated to those who we continue to speak with, while even gaining wisdom through the communication process. Student of everything, master of nothing.
Love that.
What's your response to that one, V?
I love the last sentence, student of everything, master of nothing. Absolutely. That's what I said. There is nobody on this planet who knows everything about everything. And we have so many things to learn. We don't know what we don't know. And just by keeping an open mind, by being mindful of the words we say, how we say things, how we communicate with our body, our expression, etc., is really, really important, especially, as I said, in this age where we can talk to everybody in the world who does not have the same background as what we have. Yeah.
And I want to come back to that, V, because I know you've got some great experience in that realm. Zaid has a follow-on comment. Says the same goes to flexibility at companies. One side asks for flexibility, but they're not willing to offer their flexibility. Yeah, for me, that's a big red flag if I'm going to either be asked for employment or contract. So your thoughts, V?
So I would say there as well, it's about yourself setting your boundaries as well, and being assertive, what we said before. I'm going to say, because everybody knows it, when I was working at Amazon, I could have worked 24/7. The company is so big and there are so many opportunities and so many things to work on that if I had wanted to, I could have worked every single day 24/7. Seriously. But then at some point, you have to say, no, I need to sleep at some point. I need to spend time with my family and I need to take a rest for myself. Otherwise, I'm going to burn out and going to depression, whatever. So by setting your boundaries, this is how you can kind of take back some of the flexibility that the company doesn't give you. And to me, one of the things I was doing with myself and my team members, I was telling my team members, okay, in the evening, I usually don't watch on my email, except if I know something important is supposed to happen, then yes, I would make an exception. But as a general rule, after 8 o'clock in the evening, I was switching off. And the same when I was going on holiday. I was telling my team members, I'm going on holiday to recharge my batteries, so I am not checking my mails, I am not working. However, if there is an emergency, call me or send me a message and I will call you back as soon as I can. And I was telling them the same. I'm not expecting you to work during the holidays because I expect you to recharge your battery and relax. And that's the same. If there is something urgent or something I really cannot find the answer without you, I will call you, but that will be the exception and not the rule. And I think in all my career, I followed that advice. And I think I've been called twice by my managers in all my corporate experience, and I've called people as well in my team in all my time. So that is as well showing your flexibility and learning to say no. And I think people will respect you even more when you are able to say no, when you are able to show where your boundaries are, because if you say yes to everything and you work all the time, then as I say, people will sooner or later they will abuse you. That's human nature. And so by showing that you are flexible is great, but showing also that you have your own boundaries and that you're not just saying no for no reason. You're saying no because you need to take a break, you need to recharge your batteries, you need to spend time with your family. And that's what companies need to understand. But as you say, Kevin, if a company cannot understand that, then that's a big red flag and maybe time to say, okay, I need to move on.
Yeah. And by the way, folks, and I don't know if you caught it, but one of the things I appreciate about V is that her title was that of a manager. Am I correct with Amazon?
Yes. Senior manager, yes.
Yeah. But what V did, and this is something that I so appreciate about her and what makes her a good leader coach, is she had a title of a manager, but she was also a leader. And that was so key. You know, her comment was she set an example and allowed that her team would get to follow that example. It wasn't just because she was the manager. That is a leader's approach to people. So I appreciate that. We've got a comment from Rosemary. Let's get that in. Best conversations are the ones where people are secure within each other to say what needs to be said, to disagree, and put other points of view forward. People grow when different points of view are in place. And one of the things, anybody that follows my content and what I talk about is servant leadership. And one of the distinguishments of a servant leader is humility. And that means not having this attitude that, as V talked about, we don't all have it figured out. That should permeate everything about us. I can learn from anyone. I should listen to most anyone to a point. There has to be boundaries, but give that respect and that due, and especially in our communication. That's where, to me, we start being wise in our communication, is when we approach it with humility and approach it openly, but with certain boundaries, a point where you will say, we're just going to have to agree to disagree, and that's okay. So go ahead, V, you got.
Yeah, I wanted to add something, and that's back to the webinar that we did a year or two ago about confidence. It's important to be confident, but not to be arrogant. And there is a thin line there, and it's exactly what you're saying, Kevin, with humility. Of course, it is good to show you're confident, you know what you're doing, you're an expert in your field, etc. And again, when you communicate, if you are, and you have a manager role or a leader's role, if you are confident, people will trust you and will be more inclined to follow you than if you're hesitating. But don't be the person who knows it all and doesn't want to hear anything else because he or she has the answer. Yes, at the end, if you're the manager or leader, you will have to make decisions. And yes, that's why you have that role of a leader. But the important thing is to make sure you take feedback into consideration, you take the information that you have. And if you have information that is confidential, that you are not allowed to disclose, then make sure that people know why you are taking this decision. I've often had to tell my team members, listen, this is what we are going to do. I cannot tell you at the moment why. I have some confidential information, but based on what I've heard and based on what I see, this is what we're going to do. And when I can tell you more, I will tell you more. And then my team members were accepting it because I was just not taking a decision for the sake of it. I was showing them that I have listened, I have taken information into account that I had, and later on I was explaining them or giving them more details. So that's why it's important to be confident, but really not, and stay humble, but not become arrogant, because then that's why you're losing people.
Yeah, Rosemary, I understand. Rosemary, remember, is in Australia, so she's approaching 11 o'clock at night there. I understand. Get some good rest, Rosemary, and we'll hopefully get to see you back next week. But yeah, it is such an important thing to be open in communication. If I approach somebody and they want to engage me in a conversation, I'll know within a few minutes if I'm being effective in listening and observing, if they're open to a conversation or they just want me to agree with them. And if I can agree with them, I'll say, okay, sure. But if I can't, I'll listen, and then I'll look for the opportunity to respectfully say, well, that's okay. You've got that opinion. I have a different view, but we don't have to agree here, and move on. Yeah. And especially in social media, there's a point, and if people haven't figured this out about me, I will discuss with anybody anything on a given day, but there's a point, especially social media, I'm not going to go there. There's a point where it shouldn't be discussed or hashed out on social media, because it's just not a wise approach. And so there are times I'll say, we just need to either end it here with, where we are, or I hope it's funny. I've offered this to a number of people on social media, and I've yet to have anybody take me up. They want to debate and disagree, and I say, well, this is not the way to do it, but I'm happy to get on a one-on-one call, or we can have coffee, and let's do this face to face. And people on social media sometimes are hiding, and just beware of that going in.
Yeah, and so you're making an excellent point, and that is also part of being wiser in communicating, is also choosing the way we communicate, what media we use. As you said, if you just want to inform people and you are leading a team, email may be fine, but if you want to give some constructive feedback, especially if it's some kind of negative feedback, you don't want to do that by mail or say it in the middle of the team. You want to do it face to face, just one-on-one. And the same with social media or communicating with people, especially nowadays with all the messages that we have, etc. Sometimes you get information by mail, and I'm also just like, I'm not going to reply, because I know it's going to escalate, because what I wrote is probably going to be not understood the way I intended to. So I always let's take that offline, or let's talk as soon as we see each other, because I don't want to discuss that by email or by messages. So also this is a way to be wise, is because, again, words can be so misinterpreted, especially as well humor. Again, I had a conversation with my husband, who also comes from another country and another culture. And some often things that I find funny, he doesn't, and vice versa. He can watch some movie and really laugh, and I'm just like, this is not funny. And so that's why you have to be careful when you write some things. It can completely go the wrong way while you didn't intend to. So be very, very mindful how you communicate, what you communicate, and by which media, because again, it can go wrong very, very easily.
Yeah, that's part of why I know some of my network are fed up with polls on LinkedIn because they become very popular, and some of my good friends on LinkedIn are going, enough. But the value of this is that for me, I can't speak to others, is I am trying to get people to better define how we communicate with each other, because again, this thing of mindset and attitude. If you think mindset and attitude are the same thing, and you go on to communicate this way, then someone responds that sees mindset and attitude as different. They're going to respond from that perspective. And that's when we start getting unnecessary conflict, because and one of the funniest or silliest things I have ever seen was I had people working for me that would get into debates and really get heated with it, and I would start laughing at them because they were agreeing in what they were saying. They just weren't saying it the same way, and to the point that they were about to get into a fight. And I thought, this is crazy.
Yeah, exactly.
And so what you said about writing, especially writing, lacks context unless you give it context. So something I might be able to say in one sentence verbally face to face might be several paragraphs written to adequately communicate it. Would you agree with that one, V?
Yeah, absolutely. You have to be even more precise when you're writing, and also pay attention to little things like also abbreviations. Sometimes, again, an abbreviation may be obvious to you or known, and even though I speak fluently English, sometimes I still see on social media people posting abbreviations, and I'm like, what are they talking about? And it takes me a while before I start to understand what it is, or I just have to Google it. What does this mean? Because I just don't know. So you really have to be very clear, very precise. I know that sometimes when I'm trying to make a joke with someone who does not know me well, I often put smileys because I just want to make sure this is a joke, and please don't take it personally, or don't take it the bad way. Or I will write like that, this is a joke, just to make it clear. Because again, in writing, you really have to be even more careful than speaking verbally. Yes.
Yeah, one of my favorite emojis when I'm expressing a lot of times is the one where the emoji's winking, like this is a joke, don't put a lot of stock in this. This is lighthearted, and because if you don't, somebody will go, oh my, they've insulted me, and it's not necessarily an overreaction, it's a miscommunication.
Exactly.
I have to chuckle. In the military, we're big on abbreviations, but what is hysterical about it is that our list of abbreviations and our book of abbreviations is about 500 pages. And I'm going, okay, there's something wrong with this picture. If we've got to do that, we're kind of missing the point here. Let's see. Jeremy, take care. Thanks. I appreciate you're having to step off, and hopefully you can join us next week. Let's see. Zaid has a comment. I would argue, I believe that we're talking about attitude versus mindset. I believe, Zaid, correct me if I'm wrong, I would argue that they're both intertwined rather than interchangeable or different. If you have a negative attitude, then definitely the mindset will reflect negative thoughts for the environment around us. And a lot of wisdom in that. They are not interchangeable, but they are intertwined. I think that is a fair and accurate statement. V, your thoughts?
Well, I was about to ask, what does intertwine exactly mean? That's what.
In other words, rather than two different things, they connect and interact.
Yes.
Intertwined. Twine is a type of string or rope in English, and when you connect them, you're intertwining them.
Okay, got it. Okay, so yes, I agree. It's true. Maybe the words are not interchangeable, but the way this was just described, it's true. If you have a wrong attitude, this will have an impact on your mindset, and people will notice it. And the opposite is also valid. If you have a positive attitude, it's usually because you have a positive mindset, which also will have an impact on our environment. So yeah, I agree.
Well, V, we have run through this hour quickly. I'm going to give you a chance if you want to a parting comment to our audience. Obviously, everyone's enjoyed you being here today. So thoughts? Tell them how to get your book and how to get in touch with you if they are interested.
Yes, so thank you again, Kevin, for having me. This hour flew by, and I could have talked about this topic for a few other hours, I think. So if people want to connect with me on LinkedIn, please do so. So my book is called My Revenge on Life. It's available on Amazon. And also always happy to connect and answer questions. So don't hesitate to follow me on LinkedIn. I must say these last few months, for personal reason, I've not been too much on LinkedIn, but I will be back soon. But yeah, and I'm also on Facebook, but the same as on LinkedIn, I haven't been very active this last month. But otherwise, I should be back soon. So, but thank you again for having me, Kevin.
Sure, and I encourage everyone to check out V's book. It's her story, and it's her story of overcoming. And it really is a good read for any of us, and an encouragement of how to endure. And once you read this, and as you see, V is a healthy, strong person. And anyway, great read. So check that out. Thanks everyone for being here. Great conversation. And it is so much better to have you commenting than us just talking. And so each week, encourage you to be here with the Wisdom Seeker Live podcast, 8:00 a.m. Eastern. And what time did you join in Central Europe, V, so they have perspective?
So it was 2:00 in the afternoon.
Okay. And then I believe in India, it's
5:30 probably.
5:30, yeah, 9.5 hours different. So give you an idea, join us. You don't have to have an invitation to join. I'm giving an open invitation, and bring others along with you so that we can all seek and gain a little wisdom together. So thanks, everybody. God bless. Have an amazing week, and we will hopefully see you next week. V, thanks again for being here.
Thank you.